Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Anywhere in the world, USA Global TV and Radio Network is being seen. This live show today is The Wise Ones, and our guest today is Kurt Roskopf, and we'll be with him just in a moment. To the USA Global TV and Radio Network is an avenue for us to get really good value out to the world. We share a lot of different topics, a lot of different people. I happen to have a good friend on today that I've known him for quite a while through the networking environment. And Kurt is, he classifies himself as an ally, but I think he's a lot better than an ally. He is actively, passionately active, helping veterans and disabled. And we're going to get a lot more into that. So Kurt, please join me on The Wise Ones, and let's learn a little bit about you.
All right. Thank you very much, Red. Thanks for making this possible. And thank you to Dr. JACALYN for all the work being done here. And so, you know, about me, it's about saying I'm sharing with you my new self, Kurt Roskopf 2.0. And what I mean by that is I've told my story, you know, thousands of times in the last decade. And kind of what I've come to is I'm going to be 52 in about 14 days. And I say that it took until I was entering my 40s before I realized something that was out there for me for decades. And I just never really harnessed it the way I really then decided I wanted to do more. What I mean by that is it starts in disability advocacy. And I'm a lifelong water skier. And so what the world of water skiing let me do is to get to a point where I envisioned a community member with a disability to ski in our water ski show. And we had him come out to ski in the show. And lo and behold, there were a couple of our leaders in the club that decided that it wasn't going to happen. So the guy ended up going home dry with the expectation he was going to water ski with us on a sit ski. And so that was a disruption in my life, where the next day I decided that we're going to form the Everybody Skis program and the Inclusion of Water Skiing campaign. And what happened with that in Wisconsin is that we more than sextupled the access to the sport of water skiing in 6 years for people coming through the state of Wisconsin with help from Florida and Illinois and other places. Again, the world of water skiing, you know, rallying around this. And, you know, now it's an institutionalized thing that water skiers around the world do see this element. Let's make sure people with disabilities are water skiing. And part of what came into that is injured, wounded veterans showed up for the opportunity and took me down this path of asking myself, how are we doing for veterans? And whether injured or wounded or not, just better responding to veterans. And, you know, this whole realm of disability services and veterans services brought me to the issue of suicide and suicide prevention. And the coincidence for me is I had served as an EMT, pre-hospital care, for 10 years. And so I just really expounded upon my passion to save lives. And this really became deep-rooted in me, deep-seated. And you know, to really build from, you know, the capacities for me to be compassionate and getting into areas of social justice issues and things like this. And on the veterans side, what I learned a couple years ago was that we have veterans who are reluctant and purposefully not sharing with a prospective employer that they are a veteran. And so an interesting dynamic there, that it's counterintuitive. You know, we would think that we'd have universal commitment to helping our veterans get employed. And then couple that with my passion for disability advocacy and to look at the room we yet have for inclusive hiring in terms of our Americans with disabilities. And when we look at the global level, how are we doing in the global marketplace, employing people with disabilities and in the business world? Like Red and I met through the Happy Neighborhood Project, Happy Business Networking, the happiest place in the world for business people. So to look at accessibility and to say, how accessible is the Happy Neighborhood Project and business networking for professionals with disabilities? You know, we have one of our collaborators from out of Scotland reporting to us that, you know, from her assessment, people with disabilities are viewed as a liability. So I have a difficult time disagreeing with that assessment, but obviously we talk about, we collaborate about it because it's not right that that is the case, just like it wasn't right that that gentleman did not ski that night at our water ski show. And again, by the way, we more than sexed up the access. So it is a thing that in show skiing, the world of water skiing, that we do commit that people with disabilities have a place in putting on a show and for show skiing. So I look at life through 6 check-in points. I look at how are we doing in faith communities involving people with disabilities, and can check in, how are we doing for our veterans? How are we doing in community groups, volunteer organizations? The disability community taught me that, you know what? People with disabilities want to volunteer too. People with disabilities aren't out there just objects of our pity and being like, you know, give me everything you got, volunteer to me, thank you very much. There is all of that. But the idea is there's also the need in leadership to make sure we're opening up capacity for people with disabilities to volunteer. How are we doing with that? What do we want to do? And then in education, to look at how are we accommodating, like with this show, The Wise Ones. You know, do we understand how people with disabilities are consuming this show? You know, and how are things out there through screen readers and things like this? You know, how is that assisting people with disabilities through assistive technology? And then do we understand what's happening in governing agencies and so forth? You know, this is something that I open myself out to. I participate regularly with independent living centers now. You know, it took until 2013 before that was really a thing for me, but it became a thing. And lo and behold, I ended up falling into place for when they were organizing for celebrating the Americans with Disabilities Act. And at the same time, I was told through the VA, the Veteran Affairs, the VA hospital in Milwaukee, that they were organizing an adaptive sports and rec expo and having great organizations like Paralyzed Veterans of America and DAV, Disabled American Veterans, and all disability services, Adaptive Adventures, and so on and so forth. Over 60 partners to this adaptive sports and recreation expo, where obviously my family and I and others in water skiing brought to the event, you know, to go through with attendees what it looks like that we adapt and accommodate people with disabilities for water skiing. You know, and we had used a pool for kayaking and other aquatics and like scuba and so forth, and, you know, rock climbing. Yeah, people with physical disabilities are rock climbing. They got it all figured out, you know, how to do it. And then sports like curling and track and field and surface sports, seated tennis and seated volleyball and so on and so forth. Just an amazing experience to be someone who's able-bodied, to be able to use seated sports and to use a sports wheelchair, and to get humbled by how well diverse ability athletes are, and to look at how I was learning from them, and I was trying to improve upon what I was doing at the moment to get up to their caliber, being that athlete with a disability.
Well, let me drag you back just a little bit. So you were a water skier way back when, enjoyed it. Apparently your family was into it too. The situation happened and you were going to bring a disabled person in to water ski first time with this particular event that was going on. For whatever reason, it was disallowed. And that was kind of I guess, the ignition of your passion that developed down the road. And so when you're looking at the disability and you started transitioning into wanting to be more than just somebody on the side, somebody being very active, proactive, as you call it, an ally, an ambassador, whatever the appropriate term is. So that kind of changed in you. How old were you at that point in time?
Like I said, I'm going to be 52 in 14 days. So this goes back a decade. So a lot of the active stuff, like the milestone things happening for me, where it was the precursor to me learning about preparing for the Adaptive Sports and Rec Expo and all that, I was 42,
Oh,
at
so
the
it
time.
was reasonably late in your life, because you had mentioned it was 10 years ago, but I was wondering if any of these other events were precipitated that, or just everything kind of happened, when you were 42 years of age, because obviously something really did change. It affected your brain to affect, I got to do something to help. And you did. And so when you're looking at disability, there are some people that have a minor disability and they are disabled. There are other people who have a major disability and they're not. Why don't you talk about the mindset that grows out of a disability from what you've seen?
Yeah, so an example would be, Red, that, like when I say the rock climbing program, we would get trained in terms of all the mechanics of it, how to use the pulley system and, do everything right for what the participant needed. And what one of the diverse ability athletes told us in, we did some debriefing sessions. And what the gentleman said is kind of where we've gone here is we come up to do this rock climbing and all the volunteers are saying, all right, here we go. I'm going to do this and you need to do that. And, stepping you through the rock climbing experience. And he said he was asking us to kind of step back a little bit and assess kind of what we're propagating there. So the idea is he's sharing, hey, I'm a gentleman who's been living with this physical disability all my life. I think, and I deal with this all day long, every day. I don't get to take a break from, these realities around my body and how things work. I think I've got a pretty good idea what I'm going to be doing in this rock climbing experience. And the volunteers were not trained or taught to have that check-in and to let the diverse ability athlete lead. And so I think that's very instructive. I think we in the able-bodied community or in the community of people with disabilities, I think we fall into the trap, which I say that's my lived experience, 40 years of life, where I fall into that trap where we think we figure it out and then we push it out to people with disabilities and we just expect them to respond to our ideas and our format and what we have in mind. The idea is that the last decade taught me that we got to put people with disabilities out in front. A great illustration of that is with My Team Triumph. My Team Triumph is a wonderful organization for diverse ability athletes in endurance sports. So what they have going on is when you talk about marathons, triathlons, duathlons, they've got a running chair that they use where the able-bodied athlete has a forearm rest and a grip, with handles. And then as they're running, they're able to, run this chair down the route of the race. And they're a team, in these endurance sports. And the diverse ability athlete has the role of a captain. So that diverse ability athlete orchestrates everything for how things are going to happen for that race. They're the leader. They're the ones that indicate the strategies and, you know, kind of what the angel, the able-bodied athlete, is going to do. And then there's others in the team, you know, to put this all together. And when the organizers of My Team Triumph get with the organizer of an endurance sport event, a race, you know, what's happened in their trail is that these organizers are saying, oh, we love this. And they're like, oh, go ahead with it. And they're like saying, yeah, we have the whole crew of runners are, you know, from the starting line back to here, and we'll just have your athletes come right up the back. And then what happens is that My Team Triumph takes a pass. They take a pass because, again, we're propagating that people with disabilities are our last thought. They participate in endurance sports events where My Team Triumph is in front. That's the world we need to create. People with disabilities are the leader. They're at the forefront. They're showing the way. And in the last 10 years, I've conjured up the mantra that, you know what? That's true. People with disabilities are the masters of ability. When I realized what I have been missing for decades, learning about global public inclusive infrastructure, universal design, assistive technology, when I went to ADA center trainings, and I learned everything that's going on in the disability community to compensate for our limitations, being people that don't have a disability, it is really marvelous that the creativity and the innovation, the technology is there in the disability community to a greater extent than outside of the disability community. I say I've learned more in the last decade in my life in terms of wisdom, to say like we're here at the wise ones. So a wise one shares wisdom. I've learned more in the last 10 years from people with disabilities, the masters of ability, than I have in several decades previous from those that are, you know, out there as movers and shakers, you know, the big deal people, you know, and everything. And it's just amazing when I enter into this conversation, the way many leaders and many illustrious people that are very popular and famous have to say, you know what, I have to admit I'm a little lacking in understanding what we need to do to have our program, our company, you know, our event and things like this better suitable and for more with what people with disabilities have in mind. So that's the key. We need to give the communication space to people with disabilities to tell us how to do. So as much as I share here today, it's not to circumvent that we really need to continue with next steps, being ask someone with a disability.
You used a term that is fairly new to me because I'm not in that community nor active in it. Typically, I think disabled, ADA, but you use diverse ability, athlete. Tell me the genesis or work to understand how that terminology, diverse ability, athlete, came about and what it really means.
Yeah, it comes about that if you learn the history that, yeah, you learn, like even at the high school I go to, you know, in our community, my daughter goes to the high school as a freshman, but you go there and they have a placard. It says, they have a placard for a ramp and they have it on their handicap ramp. And this is for new construction. This is in recent years, they're using the term handicap. So if we're really in a good relationship with the community of people with disabilities, you know, by and large, the community does not want us to use the word handicap. And right in my own community, you know, our school district is still using the term. So in a school where it's a government entity, federal funds at play and so forth, we still have this dynamic. And the history of handicap comes from is that they have in their hand a cap, and you're equating people with disabilities as people who are needy, that you know, contribute financially and so forth. That's the history of the term handicap. And then when we say disabled, they say, you know, a car can become disabled because the engine fails and whatever, and it's disabled. But a person, I mean, maybe a person when they die is disabled, you know, but really even there, it's still looked at as like the final disability that we all have when we pass away. But, you know, they try to get us to not look at a person as becoming disabled, because then that's a limiting thought when you say you're disabled. So they call for, please look at my ability and not as much my disability. Yeah, disability is part of my, you know, profile, and it's part of who I am, but it's not the limiting part of who I am. There's so much I can do, and let's look at with what every person can do. Let's focus on that. What are we going to do, and what are they looking to do with us? And like I said, even in the volunteer world, we need to make sure volunteer managers have this mindset that they need to be recruiting people with disabilities too, as well, to their volunteer programs.
You know, I worked for a large company many years ago, and one of the things we had to do was to define exactly what the job duties were. So if you had to lift a 30-pound weight off the floor and put it 4 feet high on a table, you know, that was one of the jobs. And somebody would come in and you would know right away, because they're in a wheelchair or whatever, it doesn't matter. You would just have this understanding in your brain that that person wasn't qualified. But with the change in government and other regulations, you could not dismiss that person. You had to interview them if they had the requisite knowledge and skills and certifications and whatever else. They had to be compared with everyone else. But let's say that Kurt was one of these people, and yeah, everything's there. You're the whole package. You can do what needs to be done. I just don't know if you're physically able to do that. So we would hire you, and then before you would actually report and sign on the dotted line at the company, there would be a screening test at a local place, third party, and they pull out the job description, and they would say, okay, fine. They would have a mock-up of various places, whatever things happen to be. And they say, okay, this is what you need to do. If you did it, you come back, you sign on the dotted line, and you're part of us. If you can't do it, you know, then you can't do it. But it was one of those things that, for my life, we just automatically assume things, and we never really understood that there are limitations, but it doesn't mean they can't do the job. And so that part was kind of an eye-opener for me in that particular field. We had one particular person who was deaf from birth, but because of the job where he was at, he could work in an environment where the noise levels were horrendous. But when we had meetings, the company brought in a person that did sign language so that they were included in everything else going on. But nobody, you know, you could be in there with earplugs and ear things, and 10 minutes or something like that would be maximum. But because of the nature of the job, somebody needed to be in there longer, or you needed to have a team of people to keep going in and out. So there's a lot of things that, in the process of becoming aware, that has, I guess, educated me more than anything else. One avenue I want to go down briefly, though, is I know in PTSD there's a lot of success with hypnosis. And I asked a question a while ago about mindset. You have two people with the same disability. One considers himself disabled, and the other one, you know, is willing to go do anything that they can do. That mindset shift, is that something that can be helped with the diverse ability athlete through hypnosis? Is that something you're aware of?
Yeah, I'm aware of it, and you know, it's one of these things in the, you know, in the marketplace, which gets quite varying responses, you know, and then in terms of agency work and so forth, you know, kind of what an administrator is able to do with that is different. But yeah, I mean, just that it's available, and for the individual to consider implementing hypnosis, it is definitely, there's a lot of credence to it. You know, for me personally, you know, I believe all of us are, to the greatest extent, you know, we're a manifestation of energy. So to me, when you bring up the aspect of hypnosis, I think, you know, I'm not a hypnotist, you know, I'm not somebody who practices, you know, delivering hypnosis or that experience. So we need to definitely, you know, continue this conversation with, the wise one who does that. But, for my interpretation, participating and knowing that's available, I think it's great, because that's another way to become, interactive, with ourselves and our inner workings and our inner energy and how it all works with our mind. And to me, those hypnotists are showing that they have an understanding, a capability, and facilitating a bodily experience which bypasses, how we otherwise just go through our day and, sleep and waking life. Hypnosis kind of works with, how we can, be in touch with our bodily experience and, exhibit it, in an alternative way. So I think those, neurological pathways and the brain, and to kind of get that muscle memory going, from a different source, or a different way to connect it all. I think hypnosis is very powerful. And for what people are trying to do to make the most of their possibilities in body movement and, that eye hand coordination, or, all of that, I think hypnotists provide us a great aspect of possibility. And for sure, veterans and otherwise any person with PTSD, a person with disability having some sort of PTSD potentially from the accident that caused their physical disability and so forth. I think it's great. And in the field of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, I would suspect, I haven't had much of any conversation with hypnotists on this, but I would suspect that there are hypnotists out there that probably specialize in this very functional application where, we're looking at functional differences, from the general able-bodied person. Because I know we've seen hypnotists who do entertainment who, like when I was in high school, our senior class had a hypnotist, and then some of our senior friends in high school would go up on stage and they'd be hypnotized. And, generally when you see these performances of a hypnotist, they're generally going to the able-bodied individuals out in the audience. So I personally have not seen it directly experienced. You're bringing up PTSD. I haven't personally taken a dive into that, but when you bring up the topic, I have no reason to rule it out for sure.
I think part of the reason of the success is that PTSD, and you broached the subject with somebody with a disability from an accident. There's two traumas that's happened. The brain processes those traumas, and if you're able to, through hypnotism, dull that brain response where it's no longer exciting the person in a negative direction, I think is very, very positive. But then you take somebody who was born maybe without, I have a client that I'm working with. She's a thalidomide baby. She was born with no arms. She's a motivational speaker. She's drop dead gorgeous, German blonde, and she types with her feet. She does everything with her feet. But if you ask her, yes, she is, but she drives a car like anyone. She does everything like everyone else. One of the things that she had happened to her was about 10 years ago, she had a massive stroke and had to learn everything all over again from scratch. And one of the things that she wanted to do after that was to run a marathon. Well, she ran the LA marathon. But, when you're a runner and you have that upper mobility, you're swinging your arms, there's a counterweight. You don't have arms. That's a very difficult thing to do. So there's a lot of mental, mental discipline that has to be applied to that. So if I'm thinking about somebody who was born with a disability and trying to use hypnosis, well, is that similar to or like the situation where somebody is overweight and they want to lose weight? That wasn't something that they were an accident, but it was something that happened over time that may be negligible into whatever happened as compared to a traumatic event. I think there's probably some very valuable studies out there. I'm just throwing it out because it's one of those little areas that I like. So take it and run with it if you want. It's a freebie.
Yeah, you do bring up a good idea. And like I said, I can't claim to have given it its fair crack in what I'm doing. So I think Red, you bring up something that I can expound upon and consider, and reach out to in networking, to have that one-to-one with a hypnotist, and kind of have a more specialized review of what you're suggesting here. And yeah, and just general, yeah, I have seen write-ups where hypnotism is something used in PTSD, but I took it just kind of newsy, just being aware that it's happening out there, but to understand more specifically, and definitely could. And with what we're doing at Project Die Hard, responding to the issue of suicide ideation and so forth, obviously we need to consider all opportunities here, because if anybody on the planet had the answer, or enough of a response, we wouldn't be seeing that the element of veteran suicide keeps escalating. So as this has been something more aware in my life in the last 15 years, and you come up with that number 22 from, that became well known a dozen years ago and so forth. And the movie came out, Project 22, and, some national awareness was started, with all of this. And the ambition was to finally get that number going from 22 to a smaller number. But the contrary has happened. So you have a parallel process happening here, that we are aware and we are responding, but the response is a fraction of what's needed. So the issue keeps escalating. It keeps climbing, So basically through the duration of the show, we statistically have lost a veteran. While you and I are talking and everybody's listening and watching, Red, everybody out there, we've lost a veteran, and it's just like, wow, this is happening all day long. Statistically, it's an all hands on deck initiative, and the majority of suicides are veteran suicides. So when you look at the whole opportunity to suppress suicide ideation, the greatest opportunity to address it is in the veteran community.
I think it's much worse than you think there, because the 22 is something that was picked up several years ago, but not all states report their veteran suicide. So you're ending up with a number that's much less than what the real number is. And so if you're saying 22, it may be 42, it may be 62. We don't know, because not every state reports that particular information, but the states that do report it, that is the number that has some validity. So I would take that number as being on the very low side of what reality is with regard to veteran suicides. And you're right, there's, just in a 40-minute program like this, you're going to be losing more than a couple, because that's just the nature of the beast when you're trying to apply statistics to anything.
Yeah, there are a lot of activists that do embrace the number, to say it's closer to 42. And, there's a lot of experts on the issue that do say, yeah, they accept, looking at the number 32. And, so yeah, there's a lot of, present day conversation narrative about it that is consistent with what you said. You're the first one that said it might be like 60, but you're right. We don't actually know.
Yeah,
it depends on an issue there. Yeah,
it depends on which states have the most veterans, because there's have a higher failure rate there. So if you're missing Utah and Idaho and Wyoming, probably not a big deal. If you're missing Texas and California, it's a big deal. Yeah. So it depends on which states you're missing. And I've never actually had somebody define which ones are and which ones aren't. They just said half the states aren't reporting the veteran deaths. So I do want to get into something before we start closing out, and I think it's something helpful for people in this particular show, and it's another way of getting in touch with you, and that's the Happy Neighborhood Project. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your involvement with that and what it is.
Yeah, this has been quite a good fit for me and everything I shared today, because I have in my life, in my adult life, done a lot of professional networking, business networking, being a guest at BNI meetings, Business Network International, such like that. And pretty much, you know, like as this stuff took over for me a decade ago, as I'm sharing with you, I did away with a lot of the professional business networking I had done. And then because in the last 20 years, I've been in with about 100 organizations, including being vice chair of the Wisconsin Council on Physical Disabilities, I saw a real need to make available to philanthropic, humanitarian efforts, volunteer organizations, advocacy groups, and so forth, a platform for marketing that they could just plug and play and, you know, get it out there. And so I got involved in, you know, I like this realm of TV, and, you know, I've been doing a radio show for 7 years and this live streaming and so forth. I got into it because I really appreciate these opportunities when shows like this are creating a way that the great work that a person or some people or some collective of many is doing, and that we can all learn from it. We can all grow together. And some groups report, you know, we're going through like a global healing process. So I talk about our culture, our custom, and our genetic memory. So the great news about the Happy Neighborhood Project, it was August 2020, I learned about it. And I learned it was a story that started in 2009 when we were going through a recession. And a gentleman by the name of Edwin, you know, became, you know, motivated to respond to lack of consumer confidence and what it was doing for people at home and in their lives, like say PTSD and so forth. And he got into the business of spreading happiness around the world, got recognized by the United Nations for his work in spreading happiness around the world, worked with the United Nations to create March 20th is International Day of Happiness. And I thought, this is the premier way for me to re-enter business networking. We call it Happy Business Networking. We present the Happy Neighborhood Project as the happiest place in the world for business people. And there are actually 4,600 plus, over 4,600 business people that have come together in what we have available for everybody. Can join for free the Happy Co-op. We're in the top 10% of all the co-ops that we look at across the nation of the US, top 10%. And if all of our members just bring in one more and we double our position to then be in the top 5%. And that's really what we're looking at because of our concerted effort in joining this mantra of part of the program. You can be a verified happy business, you know, and such like that. And we have workshops once a month where we have a happiness and positivity workshop. Edwin, through a TEDx talk, you can find it on YouTube. You go to YouTube and you search happiness as a default position. A great TEDx talk there. You know, so again, through showing social enterprise through Happy Neighborhood Project with the social mission and the social objective, you know, with what I'm trying to do to spread inclusion and integration from the perspective of people with disabilities and to be a change maker, a change agent for response to veterans. I thought I wanted to hop into this business network. And right now we have 25 Zoom meetings a week. You can find it at happyneighborhoodproject.com. Go to the events tab. You can see the networking there. You can also see classes. There are master classes available throughout the month, so on and so forth. So yeah, a lot to offer with the Happy Neighborhood Project and Edwin's work, reaching tens of thousands of people out there and all of that. Yeah, a very vibrant and abundant group. And I wouldn't be on the show if it wasn't for them. So Red, yeah, thanks for acknowledging HMP.
Okay, we're right about time to wrap up things. So I think people have a pretty good idea of where your passion lies. And if they don't, they're missing the boat, because I think you defined it very, very well. So how do people get in touch with you and how can they help you?
I would say I would like to direct people to projectdiehard.org and can email me, Kurt, K-U-R-T, at projectdiehard.org. And folks can call and text me at 262-372-1-SKI. That's 262-372-1754.
So the Project Die Hard is exactly the way it sounds. It's not a .com, it's a .org. So Project Die Hard, all one word, .org. Or you can reach him at his website, Kurt at projectdiehard.org. Kurt, thank you so very much for your time today. I really and truly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you again on Happy Neighborhood Project, because we do bump into each other there more often than we think. So you have a great day, and thanks again for joining us here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network.
And stay happy.
I always do. In a very few minutes, looks like about 20 minutes, I'll be hosting the Talking Heads portion of the USA Global TV and Radio Network. I think this week we're on week number 4 of wellness hot topics and trends for 2023. And since we're almost on top of 2024, it's the trends that are continuing on. We took the first couple of weeks and we flew over to about 35,000 feet. And we talked about dozens of individual things that are going on that may have been resurrected years ago, fell to the wayside and came back again, or fell to the wayside and never got resurrected, or something is coming out brand new right now. And the last week and this week, we're actually diving into what are those individual things? What do they encompass? What do they do for you? Is there anything there that might not be beneficial that you should be aware of? And so we're going to go into detail into each one of these little hot topics and trends so that you have more awareness, more education as to what are things that you can do to improve your wellness. Now, wellness being a little bit different than health. Health is the physical condition, where the wellness is all the actions you're taking to get that health to that whatever level you want. So that given the case, I am going to sign off here. red.olaughlin. Appreciate your time today on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Next week is Thanksgiving. Yes, there will be a show on Thanksgiving, just to let people know. So thank you very much. And I'll turn it back over to Dr. JACALYN for whatever else we may happen to have here today. Bye now.
USA Global TV and Radio, in partnership with Dr. JACALYN LLC, present Amazon #1 best-selling author, Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. Dr. JACALYN KERBECK is a certified life, career, and executive coach who teaches people how to listen at an elevated level through her courses and her books. Dr. KERBECK teaches her clients how to open their hearts and express themselves through their creative genius. In her children's book series, The Amazing Adventures of Lady Ella, the listening mentor, Dr. KERBECK teaches children and their families how to listen at an elevated level. Dr. KERBECK has worked with clients across the world to guide them in how to express themselves and communicate at a highly effective level. Join our team of elevated listeners so you can listen without judgment, without providing a solution, without interruption, and without stealing the stage. To order your books today, go to drjacalyn.com or Amazon.
Hello everyone, I'm Simon MacDonald. I live in the West Highlands of Scotland, a very beautiful part of the world. Seems a long way from the USA Global TV station. But remember, USA Global TV is worldwide. It's a fantastic platform. And every Wednesday, I come along here as part of the show of the United Kingdom, News and Culture. And it's just like a family reunion each time. It's one of these amazing stations that has such a beautiful, friendly, and intelligent atmosphere as well. And we reach out to an audience in the most unimaginable places. And I came here, I don't know, must be over a year ago now. I was introduced by Dr. Philip Chan, and I met Ian Plum-Turner and Helena Chard, who are co-presenters on the show. And then Diane Floyd-Bem came along as well. And I mean, you know, the five of us, Dr. JACALYN, of course, who is our host and our mentor, has just made this show work so well. Tremendous people, lovely time we have, and we impart a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. Nothing's rehearsed. It's all done off the cuff, and it all just gels. And we get great feedback from people coming back and saying how they're enjoying the show. It's lovely to hear. And it's lovely to get that interaction from outside as well. And we're all listeners, and some of us are elevated listeners as well. So we enjoy every second of it, and we hope you do too.
Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome. My name is Roland Friedl, and maybe as you can recognize from my accent, I'm Austrian, so it's a small country in the middle of Europe, in the heart of Europe. And yeah, I'm 59 years old. I'm a father and a grandfather. And from my business background, after my very short but very successful corporate career, I was the youngest member of board of director in a huge business, a huge company. I started my own businesses in different areas, in different industries, and I got a lot of experience, what is working, what is not working. And about 2.5 decades ago, I started a training, coaching, consulting company, Spartan Performance Systems, where I did and still do train and consult international huge businesses worldwide, like Xerox and other big players in the world. So we do a lot of sales trainings and management trainings with my team in different languages. That's my main background in business. Besides that, I'm very engaged in men's work and also in the environment. That's my background, to make it shortly. So to be honest, I'm very curious about what's going on in the world. I love to learn. I love to travel. So my huge passion is traveling. Right now, as you can see the background, I'm sitting in my motorhome. So after 14 years living on a beautiful island, I decided to move into my motorhome and travel to Europe and live and work from my motorhome. So, and I got engaged to USA Global TV and Radio actually a year and around 9-10 months ago. A very good friend of mine, he contacted me and asked me if he can invite me for an interview on USA Global TV and Radio. I guess the show was called The Journey of My Life. And to be honest, in the beginning, I said no, because I had very bad experience on interviews in my business careers. I did it twice for a TV channel in Austria. And then they cut it and edited it. And at the end, my comment was totally different than to the reality I said. So I said in the beginning, no, but I trusted this guy. So they said, okay, let's do it. He told me I don't have to fly to the US. I can do it from my home. At the time, this was his island in Mallorca. So, and it was an amazing, and a beautiful conversation. And then Dr. JACALYN contacted me and asked me if I'm interested in becoming a co-moderator of a show. And so we started the Mallorca Connection, which is a weekly show on Monday, the Mallorca Connection. I got more and more involved. I became an elevated listener because I strongly believe it's important to listen first before you talk. And I had the chance to host and moderate and design my own shows, like the Earth Show in the past, the Men shows. I became a talking head, an expert on business topics. So I hosted, moderated, I guess about more than 100, maybe 200, I don't know, idea, shows on USA Global TV and Radio, and I still do. And finally, we started the It's Your Healthy Lifestyle, a very good show, and we bring a new one on about the planet Earth. Yeah, that's a little bit what I'm doing here on USA Global TV and Radio. So why I'm doing this? First of all, I really love new medias. I love the platform. I love the work that this Dr. JACALYN is doing to educate people. It's all about sharing, caring, and connecting and networking. And the benefit I got out of this in my personal experience, I learned a lot about myself, to be honest. I learned a lot about my strengths in moderating, in hosting, in talking live in front of a video camera. I learned a lot of myself, where are my strengths, where are my weak points that I have to improve. I met a lot of new interesting people. Some of them became friends of mine. Actually, after all, it's a hell of work, to be sure. Yes, it is, to be prepared, to invite people for the shows, to find new topics, to do research on the facts. But I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the industry, the media industry. I learned a lot about broadcasting, videos, interviewing. And as I said, I met interesting people, a lot of interesting people, and also made new friends where I'm very happy for that. So yeah, USA Global TV and Radio, it's the platform to connect. It's about sharing and caring. And for me, USA Global TV and Radio is a huge family, and I'm very thankful and grateful for this experience. And yeah, and for I guess the best is yet to come. Thanks a lot from Roland from Austria. Thank you. Bye.